faculty, students, and staff are doing amazing things in teaching and learning. And I think some of those things are coming out to be showcased today, and it's pretty exciting. So I can't wait to see them myself, people structure stuff. And also, I also get the pleasure of, working with our esteemed leaders in academia too, from time to time in different capacities, and also seeing the great things that they do. And when we were planning this conference, my good colleague here, Ruth Hickey, she had the brilliant idea, why don't we have a leadership panel? And, and then she stuck me up here. So thanks, Ruth. Yeah. But no, brilliant idea, and I think we're going to have, some lively conversation here this morning. So without saying anything further, I'd like to introduce our panel. And first up, we have Dr. Alice Gaudine. And Dr. Gaudine is the Dean of the School of Nursing here at the St. John's campus. Dr. Gaudine is a longtime faculty member of the School of Nursing and has taught courses in many different areas of the undergraduate and graduate programs, including mental health, therapeutic communications, leadership, and program development. And next up, we have Dr. Donna Hardy-Cox. Dr. Hardy-Cox is the Dean of the School of Social Work. Dr. Hardy-Cox has an extensive background in student affairs and services and experience in designing and delivering social work, higher education, and professional development curriculum in online, face-to-face, and blended classrooms. Next up, we have Dr. Rob Shea, and Dr. Shea is the Associate Vice President, Academic and Student Affairs for the Marine Institute, and is also a faculty member of the Faculty of Education. Dr. Shea's research and teaching embraces career development, experiential learning, higher education leadership, and adult education. He is currently co-principal investigator of a project on career integrated learning, which seeks to bridge the divide between curricular and co-curricular learning. And last up, we have online here with us Dr. Jeff Keshen. And Dr. Keshen is the Vice President of Grenfell campus, and as recent as November 2017, so welcome. It's a real pleasure to meet you, Dr. Keshen. Dr. Keshen has a background in experiential learning and leadership in teaching. He has had great success in developing programs that encourage leadership in young people, including programming and specific interest in vulnerable and First Nation students. Welcome to all of our panelists. And, I'd just like to say that I just pointed out the key things related to teaching and learning, but I could go on for the whole session on each one of these individuals and the outstanding achievements that they all have in their careers. So we'll go on now to introduce our questions and how this is going to work, just to give you a broad overview. The format, we have now 50 minutes, and we're going to try to save some time at the end for questioning. But we have 3 questions, and each panelist will answer each question, and then we'll try to leave some time, as I said, for questioning. Okay, so here we are off, and I'll start with you, Donna. Dr. Hardy-Cox, and we're going to start with the first question. What does the concept of transformational learning mean to you?
Good morning, everybody. It's great to see a lot of familiar faces. I see at least one person in the audience over here who did some transformative work with me a number of years ago when we created a Star Trek video when there was still VHS tapes. So nice to see you again. Thank you for the opportunity to pause from my current work and to really think about something that I'm very passionate about. The theme for your event is Transformative Learning, Crossroads of Curriculum, Instruction, and Technology. So drawing upon my own experiences and the concept of transformative learning, I've come up with my own definition. In my definition, transformative learning is the learning that creates a sustained aha moment. It's the point at which a student sees something they saw before, but now see it a little differently and is moved to action. It reminds me of a student in an introductory social work class a number of years ago who had a service learning component to the course. The student chose to do their service learning project at a local food bank. Up until this time, the student had never encountered an individual who was homeless and hungry. The student's eyes were opened. The student wrote about it in the required assignment journal and completed the requisite number of hours in the volunteer organization. But the aha moment happened for that student and the transformative learning, and that student has become a long-standing volunteer at the food bank. It also reminds me of another situation of a student in a class who is playing a game known as the poverty game. It's a board game simulation. This game during the poverty simulation, you take on the identity of an individual living in poverty for 1 month. It is often an emotional exercise which moves students to action. In coordination with many of the transformative learning theorists, this may be called a disorientating dilemma in their language. In each of these two examples, the faculty member is challenged, or I was challenged, to extend the curriculum beyond the facts, the figures, and policy analysis into action. Now, I have to admit that I do come to this somewhat honestly with some of my own background. My own graduate work was influenced by student development theory and a structural approach to social work. Structural social work examines the structural context of the person and social problems in the context of social work practice. This focus is to intervene and to change the nature between people and their structural contexts. This type of learning stresses community analysis and awareness of policies that affects the lives of people. So within this context, gender, class, race are absolutely considered essential to the curriculum. My own graduate education taught me the importance of working with individuals, groups, and communities, and how to build new knowledge and apply it in a very practical way. For example, in my social policy classes, students were taught the requisite theories and models of policy analysis. Students would typically select a policy model and select a local issue in the province and apply their theoretical framework to the situation that they selected. So students would then put together a formal policy presentation, and typically we would invite in the requisite government officials from the various departments, federal and provincial governments, to share with them their analysis of that policy. One of the examples I clearly recall was a group of students who reviewed a policy on why youth in care had their teeth removed instead of filled when they were cavities. The students advocated about this policy and became very passionate about explaining and advocating on behalf of those young people why this was not a proper policy. Students are transformed because they learn through these different methods. So in my definition, it's that aha moment that sustains students and moves them to action.
Thank you, Donna. That's fantastic. And now we'll move to actually Dr. Jeff Keshen online. And I'll just remind the panelists too that we'll keep it to about 3 minutes per question.
Okay, I thought it might be about 5 on the opening, if that's okay with you. I just had a few things. Anyhow, you can cut me off and pull the gong show thing on me if you want.
I would never do that.
I'd say that to start off by this is part of a bigger issue. It's a lot of books and journals on this topic, but of course you wanted me to speak from personal experience. So for me, transformational teaching and learning really comes down to some simple matters, and that's instilling within the student the love of learning and getting them engaged in the topic. It can take on many different forms. I'll get to a few examples. But in my view, it's also most significantly achieved when you tap into, as a teacher, your strengths and your interests, so your approach is genuine. Also, I think that transformational learning connects when you're showing students that you deeply care about their learning and their success. Student perceives you as caring, approachable, empathetic. A professor can and often should be tough and demanding, but they also need to demonstrate that they're doing their utmost to have students perform to the best of their ability. Now, some will say that transformational learning relates to getting students out of their comfort zone, to reflect, to grow through various methods, including experiential-based learning. I've seen that succeed. But some of the best teachers that I've encountered were those that were also quite decidedly traditional in their ways, the chalk and talk types. But they brought incredible passion to their topic, demonstrated mastery over material, instilled within students incredibly interesting and valuable things that they learned or that they got from their discipline. And I think that if each one of us reflect on why we went into our various field, it was that teacher who really sparked that interest for us, that showed that they believed in our ability. But beyond the transformational power of personality, and it is very influential, I've also seen incredibly and deeply impactful initiatives that make students more reflective learners and arguably better people. One example back at MRU, Mount Royal University in Calgary, was the Treaty 7 Field School, where we had students go out throughout southern Alberta, living with, learning from elders in that area. Another at Grenfell, which I've seen, is psych professors having their students down at agencies that deal with those who are having mental health challenges, and they've confronted some of their own biases in that process as well, and they've learned about themselves. But I think that also, in terms of looking to that bar that we often set for transformational learning, that we need to show some care, because students come with different life experiences and coping mechanisms and their ability to deal with uncomfortable situations. At a former place that I worked, there was a faculty member. She was an exceptional professor, a specialist in race theory, but what she wanted to do was to get students to confront the inherent biases that they felt that each and every one of us had. For some students, that was transformational. It was really a learning experience. For others, I can say that we need to show care, because for them it was a very traumatic experience. Some people will bristle, as we've seen, against the term safe spaces in classrooms. But I think as well, when we think of transformational, I don't believe we can connect with students if we create a situation which provokes them perhaps to recoil in the process. I also believe that effective teaching must have really clear and evident meaning to the learner. Several years ago, I started experiential learning at Ottawa U and carried on the same at MRU. And some students had that voyage of self-discovery, prompting them to either consider or even to reconsider a certain career path. In other cases, what I saw was that there was marginal connection for the experiential part to the stuff that they dealt with in the classroom, and it felt like an artificial add-on. In other contexts, I've observed traditional teaching as most transformational. There was one award-winning teacher that I encountered back in Calgary who was an early adopter of a lot of the technology, but when in fact he discovered as a humanist and as a Shakespearean is that the very traditional ways of teaching were most effective. Now, I am a history prof, and for me, the feeling that I've been able to transform a student's experience is when I feel that I've truly connected with them through my teaching, where I see my numbers in the course remaining the way they are. I don't see large numbers of students dropping out. And I try to incorporate what actual experience tells me are the most effective ways of delivering the material and receiving material. On the delivering the material, it can be various forms of multimedia. It can be getting guest speakers into the classroom. I often get war veterans in. On the delivery, on what the students deliver to me, I try to incorporate universal design for instruction, which enables them, different learners, to provide material through a multiplicity of ways. So for me, transformational teaching and learning is about connecting with, sparking interest in students, get them to see the same passion that we have for our topics, and it can be achieved through different forms, and it's demonstrating care, commitment, and playing to your strengths as a teacher, so you're able to come across as what you're doing is quite genuine. So we not just appeal to the extroverted student and the confident student, but also to those who are shy and sometimes uncertain, who too often I see still fall between the cracks. So I tried to keep it within and sped it up a little bit for you.
You did a fantastic job.
I put it on a 78 for those of us a little bit older.
Thank you, Dr. Keshen. And next, we'll ask for comments from Dr. Gaudine, please.
Thank you. I don't think I'll be able to talk that fast, but I'll try to squeeze this into the 3 minutes. When I think about transformational learning, I think about learning that goes beyond content knowledge. Transformational learning changes what we know and also what we can do with that knowledge. It changes our perspective, how we see the world, ourselves, and others. Transformational learning may occur when we go through a major life event or crisis, but it can also occur when our assumptions, beliefs, or values are shaken, and that can happen in the classroom. When we go through a crisis or when our assumptions are shaken, we think about the meaning of the experience. This critical thinking can help us understand new or other perspectives. I'm going to talk about the importance of transformational learning as it relates to nursing education, which is very similar to some of the examples that Donna gave about social work education. However, I hope you can relate what I say to how and why transformational learning is important in your own discipline. Transformational learning is important in nursing education because one of our goals is to help nurses understand and respect the perspectives of patients, clients, residents with whom they work. Nursing students may learn what their assumptions and values are when they encounter clients who are very different from them. They may reflect on how their assumptions and beliefs influence their behaviors and their expectations of other people, and how persons with diverse assumptions and beliefs may behave differently. We expect that nurses are empathetic and caring. It is part of the profession and part of their role. But nurses care for diverse persons, including persons with very different values and behaviors that they agree with. And perhaps nursing students, like experienced nurses, are like all of us, are most empathetic with persons who are similar to us and share our values and behaviors. So as nursing students come to understand different people's perspectives, they're able to convey respect for them as unique individuals. Nursing students no doubt come into the profession because they care about others, but learning about people that have very different perspectives help them understand these people better. When I think of transformational learning, I also think of two of its assumptions, humanistic assumptions and constructivist assumptions. The humanist assumptions include that each human is an individual, and from their experiences, they form meaning. As well, each human has the potential for growth, development, and self-actualization. Nursing instructors guide nursing students through transformational learning experiences where students think critically about their own experiences, interactions, and behaviors. This critical thinking and self-reflection becomes a way of approaching new experiences and therefore guides students' subsequent experiences throughout their entire career. Of interest, a key role of nurses is to help others grow, develop, self-actualize, similar to social work, and to help individuals, families, communities to become healthier. In short, a key role of nurses is to help their clients learn healthier behaviors, and not just to learn the knowledge, but to use this knowledge. So what nurses do to help clients with transformational learning. To help clients with transformational learning, it's useful to reflect on one's own experiences of transformational learning. In addition to humanistic assumptions, transformational learning is based on constructivist assumptions. Constructivist assumptions include that people create meaning from experience. Experience can change a person's assumptions, which helps the person to see different perspectives. Nursing students learn how their own beliefs can impact their interpretation of other people's behaviors. They also learn to consider multiple perspectives to help them understand themselves. Am I out of time? No? Okay.
No.
So historically,
Finish up.
many of you probably have mothers who were nurses or aunts or great aunts. And historically, nurses went to hospitals, sometimes even called training schools of nursing, and they learned a lot of content. Content that each professor treasured, and today still treasures, and believes essential to cover, but content that a year or so later may no longer be relevant. What today's nurse graduates need is to use knowledge in new and complex situations as our healthcare context continues to evolve. They need to be able to assess patients' and clients' status and to think critically, and they need to be empathetic. They need not only knowledge about ethics, but ethical comportment, which includes relational skills. Learners who approach situations by questioning their assumptions, thinking of different points of view or perspectives, and working through the meaning of their own experiences have developed the skill of lifelong learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gaudine. Fantastic. And now we have Dr. Rob Shea.
Every time
Rob?
can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Every time I hear the word Dr. Rob Shea, I think my father's rolling over in his grave. His philosophy was that, Robert, you're never going to make a career out of, make money from talking. Well, lo and behold, it's come full circle. We've been asked to talk about our own experiences and how that impacts on our teaching and transformational learning. So let me just give you my kind of epistemology in that I think we all bring to our teaching or our administration of teaching or our love and passion for teaching is our own experiences. And I always tell people when they're grappling with their teaching, whether they think they're fake, they're in front of a group and they're seen as the expert and they're not really the expert. There's lots of research articles out there on that. Or that they're truly trying to innovate their teaching to more engaged students. And Maureen Dunn was involved in former DELTS. And her and I worked on a certificate, a pilot certificate in higher education teaching that required new faculty members to come in and tell us what they wanted out of a potential certificate. And the number one question for us when Maureen was in that role and we were co-facilitating, the number one issue or question from new faculty members was, how do I engage the students? Because the passion that they had for, as Danny has talked about, calculus or the fruit fly or whatever it may be, they didn't understand why the 200 faces or the 4 faces in front of them weren't as passionate about the fruit fly. They couldn't get that because their whole world was undergrad, grad, doctoral stuff, all focusing on the fruit fly. So they wanted to try and figure out, how do we engage students more? And it dawned on me, and every part of my own worldview has been predicated on the fact that I couldn't decide what I wanted to do at university. So I did business, and then all respect to Tom, business wasn't really working on the quant and accounting side for me. So I found that there was 2 options at Memorial. One was economics with a minor in business. The other was political science with a minor in business. So I did an economics course, and I'm happy to say I got a 52 in it. I was one of Danny's math students. And then I thought, well, I'm not going to be able to do this as a major. I probably should go back and do the course, to which I got a 51 in. Same professor, I might add. So I kind of took that and said, maybe political science is where I should go. And I truly found a niche within political science. And when I thought that there was this transformational experience, it didn't happen every day. But it truly happened in certain classes, like with Dr. Gunther Hartman on international law, which inspired a number of current justices and lawyers in the province. Talked about Susan McCorkadale, who talked about public administration and brought a number of different pieces to bear for me. But when I think about my own background, it really started, my passion for teaching started at the Murphy Center. And I'm not too sure if anybody here is familiar with the Murphy Center. So the Murphy Center's, well, I started with them in 1986, which was brand new. Believe it or not, I mean, when we look at the literature on transformational learning, it's all about adult education theory. We were using an adult education theory at the time for young people who had multiple barriers to participating in formal learning. And I did intake at the Murphy Center for a number of years. And this time of the year, all the principals would be lined up outside my door saying, Joey just needs a break. You got to take Joey. And I'm saying, well, why aren't you dealing with Joey? Or Jane, or whatever the case may be. And I think one of the things that I took from the Murphy Center was learning is about people. We all look for transformational moments, those aha moments. In actual fact, transformational learning in its entirety is aspirational. We may get there, but we have to aspire to it. But it truly isn't always what we have in our classrooms. There were a number of successes we had at the Murphy Center, and there was a number of places that we didn't think we did enough. But the main premise was that students came in through that door, and believe it or not, it was 95 Water Street, which is now Raymond's Restaurant. Go figure the juxtaposition between where I was in '86 and working with those students, or those participants, which we call them, right through to where it is now. But we looked at that whole piece of, if students wanted to learn and they came in and they got out of bed that morning, we had to take every ounce of energy and strength we had as teachers and as counselors and provide that opportunity for them. And it wasn't as much about learning about World War I and Beaumont Hamel. It was taking students out of that classroom environment and walking them across the street to the War Memorial and sitting down on that War Memorial and maybe playing guitar if that's what they wanted to do, or drawing, or whatever the case may be. We went to the heart of what inspired them to be aspirational learners or transformational learners. And there was an opportunity that is structure, and when I think about our role, and I know there's another question coming up, about what is our role as administrators, I mean, you know, realistically, we provided a welcoming, supportive learning environment conducive to learning at the Murphy Center. And that has stood with me for many, many years, is when I see those faces, and I can still see those faces coming through the door 30-odd years later, that really had multiple barriers and in my mind should not have gotten out of bed that morning considering all the barriers they had, but they found their way to my classroom, or they found a way to my office for counseling. So there's an element of how we look at transformational learning. And Denny made a comment this morning about the Dead Poets Society. You know, good teaching is not about Robin Williams on a table waxing eloquently and inspiring the masses. Some of my best instructors, and one name comes to mind in a PhD program at UBC, was Bill Bruno. And I was struggling with my writing, as many of us do. And so Bill Bruno was the editor of 3 journals, and I said to him, I'd come to you for advice because you've given me so much red ink on my last paper. I'm ready to learn about this. I want to know more. And Bill said, you know, Rob, I've been teaching for 37 years, and I edit 3 journals, so I don't have to teach much, because teaching is not my passion, writing is my passion. But I still grapple with my writing. That, for me, was a transformational moment that was not in the classroom. It was about feedback I got on a paper, and the fact that that was my tipping point, my aha moment was, I want to learn more. And now, 20-odd years later, I'm still channeling Bill to say, yeah, we all struggle with certain parts of what our jobs are, or what we want to be, and what our passion is. But at the same time, we have a responsibility to come out to events like this to learn about Bloom's taxonomy, or experiential learning, or transformational learning, because they are aspirational comments that will allow us to be more transformational in our own lives, but also in the lives of others. Because I truly believe that, as Parker Palmer quoted, and we heard in the review, I think the review, it wasn't 2.0, but our review of the teaching learning framework back a year and a half ago, was a tipping point for a better conversation here at Memorial. And that's what I wanted from that, was a good conversation, to see all of you here. But Parker Palmer wrote a book called The Courage to Teach. And if you haven't read it, it's an easy book to read. Just go out and get it. It's an older book, as most good things are that we ascribe to. But The Courage to Teach talks about the courage to stand in front and teach, and the vocational calling to teach. And that's what we heard from one of the new faculty members in the Teaching and Learning Review, which I thought, and I still stays with me for the last year and a half now, that one faculty member said, Rob, I know all about flipping classrooms. Rob, I know all about transformational learning. I've done all the reading, but I don't have the courage to do that in my classroom. Well, that goes to a very relational, not transactional piece. It goes to a very relational piece, as all of us are challenged as instructors, is to have the courage to flip a classroom, the courage to embrace transformational learning or experiential learning, and then to embrace that, because the end result is that we get a chance to touch the future, which is those young people in front of us.
Thank you, Rob.
Perfect.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut you off.
It's easy to see myself and Kim work together.
You'll get lots of opportunity. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. We'll move on to our second question now, and I will ask, in the interest of time, we have 2 questions left, so if you can keep your comments to 2 minutes. Rob?
Oh, I'm going first this time. Oh, good.
Yeah. We will go first, yeah. Our next question is, well, obviously transformative learning is a goal in the faculty, your faculty school and campus. Give me example, or the audience an example of how that is actually evident. One example in 2 minutes.
Thanks, Kim. I can't say hello in 2 minutes. So let me give you an example. At the Marine Institute, where I'm currently working, we have 3 schools. So we have 3 deans that report up through my structure. All are very different. School of Ocean Technology, School of Maritime Studies, and School of Fisheries. Very different structures, very different expectations. Young people come, and give one example. Okay, there's lots of examples, but let me give you one. So Captain John Ennis is a master mariner, an instructor in aeronautical science. The majority of our instructors have been in the field of their current work that they're teaching in. And Dr. Ennis just won our teaching award a number of years ago. And in one of the submissions from the students, number one, we give out our teaching award at our graduation ceremony. And when we announced his name, the whole graduating class of nautical science stood up and clapped. Nothing better than that kind of a transformational moment for me to see to why we have a teaching award and why we picked the right person that time. That there was an element of he takes students from his class, brings them to Signal Hill, and uses the sextant. So we're not going to where current simulation is with our $8 million simulator in harsh environments. We're taking those students and bringing them back and saying, that's great, but if all the computers die on the ocean, or when you're on your ship, and you have 400 employees on that ship and $1 billion cargo, hey, guess what? You might want to know the sextant. But it gives them an opportunity to talk about what it is, what the history is, and how it ties into current technology. So when we look at that, don't forget, all the courses in nautical science are governed by Transport Canada regulations. So it's very much expectation of sage on the stage. You stand up, you give the material, they wrote, memorize, and give it back. That's not what it's about for our instructors at the Marine Institute, who are, I might add, some of the best instructors in North America on the oceans environment. How's that?
Thank you, Dr. Shea. Perfect. Thank you. Dr. Gaudine?
Okay, I'm just going to mention a few strategies that we use in nursing, and one of them is a concept-based curriculum, and the 3 schools of nursing in the province are implementing the first year of a concept-based curriculum this September. Nursing students obviously still need to learn an awful lot of content, but using a concept-based curriculum should help them integrate their knowledge about key concepts across different health conditions, age groups, and so on. And then as new topics are related, faculty can relate them to a previously introduced concept. Ultimately, this should be able to help students recognize the concept in a new situation, and this contributes to their autonomous thinking rather than rote learning. So there are experts in this room that are on that committee doing that. Joyce is one, Andrea Barron's one. So if you have any questions about that, there's Sandra McDonald, you can ask them at the end. Thank you. The other thing I was going to say is we like to use, and we're starting to use, the words respectfully challenge and courageous conversations. And those words, respectfully challenge and courageous conversations, promote critical reflections and questioning. And when you think of nursing students, a lot of their learning is experiential learning in clinical settings or in simulation labs. So we actually need to promote their need to develop the skill of questioning why care is happening in a certain way, and particularly these terms came out of the patient safety movement, because sometimes they may see something and have a question, why is it happening there? And the answer is, oops, maybe it shouldn't happen that way. And then what that means is a young nursing student or a young nurse who's just transitioned to the workplace, or a nursing instructor who's a guest in a healthcare organization, has to have the courage to have a courageous conversation and respectfully challenge somebody. And it's a learned skill. I know one professor told me how excited her student was when, and she came back into the class in the clinical setting, the debrief setting that we have after clinical meetings, and she said to her instructor, I just had a courageous conversation. So that's, I think, when the instructor felt really that she had made a difference. And another thing we do is self-reflection, and that's ingrained Students sometimes hate that because after every experience day, every simulation, we want them to write a self-reflective journal. We don't mark these, but it really is to get people to think about, how did the thing they see? So for instance, in the example of the lizard that we heard this morning, my question would be, how would looking at a student who you thought was the same as you perhaps, maybe not as good in math as you are, but realizing that he went through life with a lizard on his chest, thinking more about that person as a person, how would that end up maybe changing some of your assumptions about some of the people? Because we as instructors are continuously being transformed by other faculty and our students. So we want to have in our school a norm of questioning is supported and encouraging, and I believe that using the words respectfully challenge and courageous conversations helps to create that norm, and I've been given the eye.
Thank you, Dr. Gaudine. And we'll come over to you now, Dr. Keshen.
Sure, a couple things that we do here, but I want to turn away from that a little bit because I'm really interested in the first conversation that we had as well. I mean, we have City Studio, we have experiential, we have reflection. We're very much about personalized learning here because we have smaller classrooms. That was similar to the experience that I had out in Mount Royal, which was an undergraduate teaching-focused university. And sometimes I'd always wonder to myself when we had profs, same with Ottawa U, that were exceptional in terms of the student ratings that they received. They had such high retention rates, and sometimes I would go into their classrooms for different contexts, and I would be expecting to see a barn burner, someone who would just be rapt, that they'd hold the students. And then I think about Rob's comment about Robin Williams and what was the movie called again? Rob, what was the movie called? I'm just drawing a blank on that one.
Dead Poets
I'm losing my
Society.
2 minutes. Yeah. And then I think about movies that drew people as well, To Sir with Love and Mr. Holland's Opus and the teachers who inspired us. I really believe, and some of those folks who were exceptional teachers, they weren't barn burners. But you know what they showed that student, and they were able to take them on the journey, whether it was experiential, whether it was international study abroad, they really showed that they had a commitment to connect with each and every one of those learners in their own distinct way. Because those students come in here, everywhere else, like us, they're unsure of themselves, they don't know whether they're going to succeed. And Rob's comment about the person also who spent the time writing with them to show them how to write, that's truly transformational. I still think that we are in a personalized business, and that personal connection will do better than anything else. So I just wanted to carry on that other conversation. I think we need to remind ourselves of that. With all the other stuff that we do, it's about personal connections with young people who need that helping hand.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Keshen. And Dr. Hardy-Cox?
I've just summarized 8 pages of notes into 2 points, so I'll see how I do with that. I think at its core, for me, it's always been knowing the student. And we say that, but do we truly mean, not that we don't mean it, but how do we understand that in our own realities? One of the things I've learned is the importance of the co-curricular and how important it is for students' learning experiences in the classroom, and in the university community and in the community at large, how important they are to come together. And that's a foundational piece for me, and I'm hearing that through the other panelists. I'll give you one example of how we are working with it in the school. We believe it's really important to start very early to orientate the students to our school and the orientation and what they can anticipate. In terms of the transformative nature of a social work education. By its very essence, it is transformative. For example, at the school, for the students who arrive at the beginning of the year, one of the very first activities they participate in is the blanket activity, the blanket exercise. And for those of you who are not familiar with it, this is a Kairos established exercise that takes students to a learning opportunity where they take on the role of an Indigenous person in Canada. This exercise sets the stage to reflect the school's commitment to the Truth and Reconciliation Report and emphasizes how important it is to our school that we begin to respond to the calls for action.
Fantastic. Thank you, Donna. Okay, so we come to our last question now. There's some themes emerging, obviously, on both sides of teaching and learning here, so it's going well. I'll ask each of you now, just for one piece of advice that you would offer about putting transformative teaching learning into practice, or transformative learning into practice. So I'll start with you, Dr. Gaudine.
My suggestion for putting transformative learning into practice is to consider if this can be done in more than one course in a program, including transformative learning experiences in multiple courses throughout a program offer a number of advantages. First, one learning experience may not lead to a lifetime practice of critically reflecting on information in situations. Further practice can help this critical reflection become the way the student or graduate approaches new situations. A second advantage of using transformative learning experiences throughout a program is that faculty in subsequent courses or years of the program can build on earlier learning. The expectations for critical thinking, self-reflections, and so on can be leveled with higher expectations for senior students. A third advantage of using transformative learning experiences throughout a program is that it can make the classroom experience more positive for faculty who are early innovators in transformative teaching learning strategies. When students are given detailed PowerPoint slides in one course and not in another, because the anticipation is that's going to be a flipped classroom, or there's going to be discussion about critical issues. The instructor who uses the flipped classroom strategy can be in a difficult position if students don't prepare for the class in advance. And the class can fall a little flat, and the students can end up basically saying, where are my detailed PowerPoint slides? I've even heard students say, okay, those are the PowerPoint slides, but there's not enough detail on them, which sort of indicates that they're used to just not attending class, getting their PowerPoint slides, and memorizing them for the exam. So I'm hopeful that with our revised curriculum, which is using content, a construct-based approach, and is built on a teaching learning framework that includes transformational learning, that we won't run into difficulties when fourth-year instructors suddenly start using different teaching strategies than the students were used to.
Thank you, Dr. Gaudine. Dr. Shea?
2 minutes?
Yes.
It's hard to distill it into one piece of advice. I think my colleagues have talked a lot about the reflection piece and the transformational piece. When I look around the room, I see people from a multitude of different sectors of the university, different silos. We might not consider them silos, but they're faculties, they're silos. One of the things after 27 years at Memorial in a multitude of different roles I've learned is that there's expertise on teaching in all of our silos. But unless we get outside the silos, to wonder what's happening in nursing, to wonder what's happening in arts, to find that courageous instructor that is doing something different in another discipline, to step outside of our comfort zone and have the courage to reach out to others, to ask them what they do. We have colleagues here from cooperative education, work integrated learning, experiential learning, student services, a multitude of CITL, a multitude of places. They're not entities within themselves, they're all entities that make up the university. And I just, my final comment will be that when I came to Memorial in 1980, I expected something different from high school, and I was really disappointed in the first 2 years I was here. I went to class, a professor stood up behind a podium and waxed eloquently, and it was less engaging than some of my high school instructors in grade 11. My kids, I have one in third year now, one in first year, came home to me after their first year, and I said, so how was your day? Of course, Dad is all passionate about, oh, this university thing is really cool. And I said, how was your first day? And he said, thought it was going to be different. So my one word of advice to you is, it's up to you in your roles, whether it be a cooperative education instructor, whether it be an educator in residence halls, whatever the role you have, a sessional instructor, a per course instructor, a tenure track, whatever that role is, understand the people in front of you are looking for something different. They're looking for learning, even if they got their head down, their hoodie up, and they're on their phone. They came through the door, like the kids at the Murphy Center, because they, at some point in their lives, at some point in their persona, want to learn. It's up to us then to figure out how to engage, how to facilitate that learning. And that's where I think my one word of advice would be, well, there's lots of words of advice, I suppose, in that, but my one word of advice is to have the courage to step outside your own comfort zone and to find out how you can enhance that opportunity, because truly I believe teaching is a vocation. It's a calling, and it's been calling all of you. So I like the idea of you being courageous, and that's my one piece of advice in lesson 2.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Shea. We'll come over to Dr. Keshen now.
Thank you. So I would say that, first of all, at its core, good teaching is always transformational. That's something we have to remember, and that P&T committee should also recognize this. Like, I'm not a guru on this. I'm a professor, tried many different things. I think it's important to be reflective, but I also think it's important for each and every professor, graduate student, anybody who teaches, is to be reflective of what their strengths are and the way that they can best bring the passion that they have to the student. I was, in many respects, a salesperson for experiential learning back at Ottawa U. We didn't have a program, and there were a lot of folks who became involved in it, and I remember would go and say, give it a try, give it a try. But, you know, for some folks, for some professors, it wasn't the right thing because they weren't entirely passionate about it. They weren't entirely committed about it. It wasn't who they were as a teacher and how they wanted to convey things to their students. So it ended up being something that was an add-on, that's something that that wasn't connecting to the course. But for them to be in the classroom, yes, I understand that some students are looking for something different. And I think our students come in many different ways. Some of them do respond to the sage on the stage, and they'll get to know if that's the type of professor that they want. But I think that just like they are a multiplicity of students, so are we. And I think that you need to be reflective, just like I do, about what is the best way that works for me to show the care that I have and the passion that I have for my discipline. To be reflective, to be adaptable, to know the things that don't work, but also to know what your strengths are. And I think that if that comes away as genuine and you show your care, you'll connect with those students.
Thank you, Dr. Keshen. And last but not least, Donna?
Thank you. My advice would be to explore the possibility in silos towards new partnerships, and it picks up on Rob's point. If somebody asked me 5 years ago if the School of Social Work, the Faculty of Business, and the School of Music had a shared agenda, it may have been viewed with curiosity or, at worst, suspicion. But 3 years later, having collaboratively established the Center for Social Enterprise, we have discovered some remarkable opportunities for transformative learning. I'm going to share one example of a music student, a business student, and a social work student who work with Stella Burry's Inclusion Choir, a filmmaker, and Amelia Curran to write a song. There is a video on the Center for Social Enterprise website, which I encourage you, if you haven't seen it, it's a terrific example of transformative education in action. So my final advice, I guess, is, as I've had to do on several times in my teaching career, is it's do something that scares you every day, and to step outside of my comfort zone, and I would encourage you to do the same. I think it has the potential to lead us to places that are yet to be discovered, and especially in this university with so many terrific opportunities across our various disciplines.
Thank you, Donna. That's fantastic. We do have a couple of minutes left for a couple of questions, if anyone has any for our panelists. Well, thank you. I think it's, it's interesting, the themes as I'm listening to you coming out. I mean, it's as much about the teaching as it is about the learning, too. The questions were centered on transformative learning. And, the things that I've heard, the students having that aha moment, not only being able to acquire some knowledge, but it's what they do with that, too. That they become courageous and committed in the learning themselves, but also too the caring and the being genuine on the teaching, from the teaching perspective, the caring and the commitment and the courage of us to teach, students so that they embrace that kind of connection is very interesting. I think it goes back to what Danny spoke in his conversation this morning about, know the students, right? It's not just about the teaching part, but the students too, and knowing why they're in the room is critical. So I really, it was a great honor to have you here this morning to answer these tough questions. And thank you very much.